Ready? Play.
Welcome back to Painting Lines. Last week we discussed Jannik Sinner's doping scandal, and this week we wanted to give a recap of the first 3 to 4 rounds of the U.S. Open and give our thoughts on the upcoming last few matches that are going to be happening this coming week and what the possible final might be as well. So, Erik, just to kick off the pod, do you have anything that you have noticed from this tournament so far or that you really enjoyed specifically?
Yeah, definitely. Also, just great to have you here in person. As you can see, in-person podcast, which is always great. U.S. Open's probably my favorite time of the year, especially in New York. And it's one of the only tournaments that I can actually get to go to, and it's pretty easy. So I went on Thursday, saw the big upset where Boddick took down Carlos. And then we also went yesterday. So just being there, you know, the whole ambiance, walking around the grounds, the honey deuces, the food's pretty good. And then just being able to see certain players that you might not, usually run into. For example, like we ran into Jordan Thompson yesterday and Purcell. So just cool stuff, getting to see the players. And, honestly, just great end of the summer, Labor Day weekend.
100%. It definitely is different being in the crowd, feeling that energy, especially when you're looking at a match like one of the ones we went to yesterday. We'll talk about it later, but the momentum shifts in that match. You could feel it in the crowd, which you don't necessarily pick up on TV. But you want to jump right into the first round here?
Yeah, round one to get us started.
So first match was another guy where he doesn't have a coach again, and that's Rune, losing the first round to Nakashima. And I think as much as this is kind of feels like a negative for Rune, it also seems like it kicked off a positive tournament for Nakashima, who is kind of starting to show more recently that 2022 next-gen champion that is like he's a guy that will be consistently higher ranked as he gets older and older, and it seems like we're seeing it in this tournament and with this win over Rune, but not necessarily the best performance for Rune overall.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he was 39% on first serves. And I thought it was pretty funny because he went on Twitter. He's very active on X, and said, no offense to my opponent, but I was 39% on first serves. Like, this is the result I'm supposed to get. So falling into the camp where he's kind of putting his loss on his performance rather than Brandon Nakashima's performance or better performance, which I think he's kind of spot on. Like, you're not going to win a match serving 39%.
It's true, but I also feel like I hope he said no disrespect to Nakashima, not just to my opponent.
Because he just said no offense, and he spelled offense wrong.
No offense to my opponent really feels like just disrespect of him. Like, if you say, oh, no disrespect to Djokovic, it's like you're at least giving them a little bit of credit. But, like, if you just say to my opponent, it's like, oh, that guy doesn't even matter. Yeah. It just matters that I serve badly. Yeah. They didn't play well at all.
Yeah, it is kind of a disrespect thing. But something I did notice when I was looking into this match is he's 0-3 against Brandon. So I feel like there could be some kind of matchup at play here where Rune just can't figure it out against him. And you alluded to this earlier where, you know, he's starting to make a name for himself. He's making better runs in tournaments. And it's a good example of someone who is not exploding onto the scene, but rather like doing it gradually. Whereas Rune, on the other hand, exploded onto the scene, did very well, and now he's starting to regress almost. And he actually said, he's like, hey, I'm 21 years old. I'm top 15 in the world. This is a slow process. Like, I'm still on the right track. You guys are just very quick to judge when I don't do well. And then you have Nakashima on the other side who, yes, he won the next-gen finals, but he's really starting to make a name for himself, not like, you know, winning titles left and right, but, you know, making deeper runs in tournaments.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to put out too high of expectations on a person too early. Isn't that what they say with like businesses? Like, if you don't want to report massive earnings for one quarter, you'd rather report small earnings year by year, because it's like then they'll start expecting those massive jumps.
Yeah, you always have to beat last quarter's performance.
Exactly. So. Yeah. So seems like Nakashima has been able to beat his last quarter's performance consistently.
Yeah, you're in good hands if you're a shareholder of Brandon Nakashima.
Exactly.
What are you shorting, Rune?
Whereas Rune was more like a crypto bubble.
Yeah. Jeez.
But then another upset in the first round was Tsitsipas out to Kokkinakis. You talked about this last week. It was your match of the week. But another guy with coaching issues, obviously, got rid of his dad. And I also wanted to bring up this mixed doubles comment that Sam Querrey, you actually brought this up to me, was he was playing in mixed doubles with his girlfriend Badosa. And Sam said, hey, if someone really thinks they're a contender to win a singles Grand Slam, they don't play mixed doubles. And so this, to me, is Tsitsipas just kind of giving up? He's like, not giving up, but like saying, hey, I just want to have fun. I want to just enjoy the tournament rather than I want to be fully just locked in on trying to win.
Yeah, I think it could be. But then on the other hand, she's still going, which is pretty crazy. So, yeah, I mean, other players have girlfriends on tour, right? Sinner, Deminar, they're not playing mixed doubles with their girlfriends because they're serious about this title. And Sinner and Deminar are also still in the draw. So,
yeah, I mean, like Sam said, it definitely seems like it isn't a positive sign for sure to be doing that when you want to be competing against the best guys in singles.
For sure. And after the U.S. Open, what's next for Stefanos? I mean, a lot of the clay players generally go over and play more clay tournaments after hard, right? So I feel like maybe he'll take some time, really get his coaching situation under control, and then start playing tournaments, or do you think he's just going to go right into it?
I think he kind of is still in that last little stretch to try and make sure he makes the ATP finals, right? Like I feel like he's on the bubble. And so it's like there's a lot of guys pretty close there. I mean, Djokovic is on the bubble too. You got guys like Fritz that are right there, Dimitrov. Yeah. They're all close there. So it's like no one is – I don't think anyone's really like eliminated from those guys, but also none of them really is like locked in.
Yeah, you said the only one who's locked in is Sinner.
And actually Zverev right now.
Oh, okay.
Zverev also is locked
he's
in now.
number two for the – okay.
Well, it's not – I think it's not guaranteed hypothetically number two, but it's like – if they got no points for the rest of the year, they would still be guaranteed top 8.
Gotcha.
And then the last thing from the first round, though, was Mensik beating FAA. So FAA obviously has been playing a lot better in 2024. Like, he had a terrible 2023, which we weren't afraid to harp on it at that point. But he's been playing a lot better this year, and then comes into the U.S. Open, loses the first round to Mensik, who is a solid player, but is very much like untested in the top level. Like he did really well in Qatar, Dubai, or whatever that tournament was early in the year. Hasn't done anything crazy since then, but beating FAA, who seemed to be on the right track, is a little bit of a bummer for him.
Yeah, I can't say I'm surprised. And this is kind of the perfect storm too. Like you said, Mensik, young, up and coming, like talented. FAA, very variable. I would have believed either way. And I guess FAA would have wished he had Ruud in this draw because he's beaten him the last few weeks in a row, which also a guy who's not really, performing as he did a couple years ago. But I think this is a bigger win for Mensik than it is a loss to FAA. Like I really didn't expect a whole lot from FAA here. Okay, that's just me. I know he's been on
the thing
rise.
Is like if you didn't expect it from FAA, then like is it even a big win for Mensik? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he's young, so he's building up his wins.
Okay,
like it's still
so it's just about the fact that he was highly ranked.
I think FAA can still ride the coattails of his previous year's performance.
But I mean, like he's done not terrible this year. Like he made the final in Madrid, and he almost won the bronze medal. Mm-hmm. Played in that match, lost to Musetti, but still, I just think it's a bummer that he seemed to be doing better and then kind of has a
his momentum
false
just
step
stalled,
here. Yeah,
kinda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But are you ready to move on to round 2 here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty, so Rublev versus Rinderknech. This was a match that was honestly impressive from Rublev because he went down 2 sets against a guy that he was very much expected to beat and then was able to kind of just, not necessarily just stay calm, but just able to keep his mind in the match and not implode and come back to win it.
Yeah, that was pretty surprising. So I actually bet on Rinderknech because he was plus 420, plus 435, and I thought it was a lot because he was up 2 sets. I saw the cash out opportunity. I was like, wow, I can make a good amount of money right here. Let it ride, and immediately regretted that decision because Rinderknech looked so exhausted, and I feel like that U.S. Open, that New York heat, just kind of warmed down and totally blew it. Blew his 2-0 lead and just looked exhausted out there. So I lost my money.
Sucked.
I know. But
Yeah.
I feel like it was one of those where I saw the positive odds against Rublev, and it's like, oh, it makes sense. The bet made sense, but I should have cashed out when I saw the opportunity.
Yeah, it's hard to make those bets in the moment though. Another match was Hurkacz losing to Thompson in straight sets. I think we're still looking at a Hurkacz not being 100%, obviously from his injury, but I still think props to Thompson for getting the win, and especially in straight sets over a guy like Hurkacz where you go to a tiebreak. They went to I think one tiebreak set, but if you go to like a tie, you're kind of expected to go to a tiebreak with Hurkacz, and even then it's like it's almost 50-50. So it's like being able to beat him in straight sets means that he was kind of decently in control of how powerful Hurkacz's serve is. Not necessarily in control, actually. That's not the right word. More like he was able to deal with it more effectively than maybe than other people are.
Right, right. And like you said, I don't think Hurkacz is 100%. I think for him, this is a guy who, after the U.S. Open, is going to need to take time off and rest, because not only did he just come back from meniscus surgery, but his calf injury that I mentioned last week, it's just one of those, like, all right, he's doing too much on his body. It's the end of the summer. Is he in contention for top 8?
I think he's close. I
He's
think there's a
gotta
lot
be.
of guys that are close.
So then I guess there's a fine line of needing to play tournaments to get points.
Yeah, the question is like whether he'll be able to perform at a high enough level to get himself in there versus, I mean, there's other guys that probably have been playing better that are on the edge. Fritz, Deminar.
Yep.
But then the last thing from round 2 was what you mentioned earlier, like the biggest shock of the tournament to that point for sure, Alcaraz losing to Van de Zandschulp. And it's just insane. Like, you think about how Alcaraz has been playing. I mean, obviously, last week lost to Monfils early. But before that, back-to-back slams and the silver medal. Hard to put anything against his season there. I mean, obviously, he didn't play as consistently as center, so obviously he wasn't number 1 in the world. But 2 Grand Slams and a silver medal is pretty impressive, especially for just the summer.
Yeah.
And then comes in Cincinnati, says he plays the worst match of his life against Monfils. Second round here, loses to Van de Zandschulp, and just looked so wild in this match. What did you think? How did it feel being there? Like, what was the difference in terms of like the energy and the being with the crowd?
Yeah, definitely. So going in, I was actually rooting for Bodek, and I'm going to call him Bodek because you actually crushed his last name pronunciation, but Van de Zandschulp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I
We're gonna go with
don't know if the D is pronounced that hard. I think it's Zandschulp. That's my guess.
Gotcha.
I mean,
Well,
that's how they were
Bodek.
pronouncing it on the broadcast.
We're calling him Bodek today, or I am. And I was going in saying, okay, I'm just hoping he can win one set so we
Yeah.
can see more tennis. I had good seats. And he wins the first set, and I'm like, oh, okay, wow, guaranteed more tennis. Wins the second set. I'm like, oh, dude, this thing's going to 5 sets. It's already 11 o'clock at night. I don't want to be here till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And then he wins the third, and I was just in complete disbelief. I was probably the only Botic fan in the stadium. It was crazy because
Alcaraz is popular.
Alcaraz is super popular, and I love. He's an entertainer. I will say, like the between the leg shots, the getting into it with the crowd, he is very fun to watch. Whereas Botic, on the other hand, complete stoic, like showed no emotion at all, didn't even celebrate. He even apologized to the crowd after his win. He was just kind of like, oh, sorry, like I know you guys wanted Alcaraz, but I got it done. It was cool. It was super cool being there, and I love the dynamic between Alcaraz and Juan Carlos Ferrer because I didn't notice as much of the coaching, like signaling, but he looked to him a lot for reassurance. It felt like hype, big points. He was there. He was locked in. He's leaned over. I thought that was super cool. Just Thursday night, Ash.
Yeah,
awesome night.
I think just that match in general. Like, I honestly think a lot of people missed it probably because you're like second round. It's Alcaraz playing a guy that, I mean, unless you're a big part of the tennis community, really into the tennis community, a lot of people have never even heard of Van de Zandschulp.
Yeah.
And then you come to this match and all of a sudden he's 2 sets up. And the crazy thing to me was like how big like the momentum swings were for Alcaraz and how much confidence I feel like there was that he was going to make the comeback, because he's done it in the past, obviously. But like, he's down 2 sets. Van de Zandschulp goes up a break and then gets broken back. And they're even in the 3rd set. And I remember looking at the betting odds, and Alcaraz was the live betting favorite.
Yeah.
Down 2 sets on serve. It's just crazy. Like, that's the level of confidence people have in Alcaraz. And today just wasn't his day. He was just too wild. Couldn't get done.
And yeah, you could feel the momentum shifting with the crowd, with the energy. And there were so many times where I just thought, oh, all right, that's it. It's done. It's done. But I don't know. People have been attributing this to burnout. Do you think he should have played Cincinnati after the Olympics so soon? Like, is that really kind of what it was? Do you think if he would have had his rest, maybe didn't have that big loss to Monfils, we would have had a different result?
I think it's tough to say, but I think that he wanted to play in Cincinnati so that he had matches under his belt going into the U.S. Open. Because otherwise it would have been he played on clay in Paris at the beginning of August, and then has a month before his next match on a different surface. My guess is that he just wanted to get matches in, and unfortunately it probably took an assault on his confidence, I guess.
Yeah. There's also all that other stuff that goes on at the U.S. Open, like all of his sponsors. You know, he had so many events that he had to go to, and just a bunch of noise, like a lot of stuff around it.
Yeah,
where he
a lot of
just
menial little tasks he has to accomplish.
Yeah, he just couldn't focus on tennis. It was like he was going out, making appearances here, photo shoots, commercials. I don't know, man. I think a lot of that just attributed to him, because during the match, it wasn't like he was playing tight. It was almost like he was playing too loose. He was like making a lot of unforced errors, doing
I think
wasn't playing conservative tennis.
I think honestly with Alcaraz, what you see a lot is like in the first set against Medvedev, for example, at Wimbledon, he was very wild. But then after that, he kind of started honing it back down. I mean, to compare it to another sport, they say in Formula One, there's 2 types of drivers. And one driver is the one that slowly pushes further and further towards the limits of the track and maybe doesn't find it, but gets slowly closer to it, versus another type of driver which goes over the limit and then slowly brings it back.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it seems with Alcaraz. Like, what he was doing is like he goes for too much early and then slowly kind of reels it back in, but sometimes he can't reel it back in like he did in this match. Versus Medvedev, he was able to, and all of a sudden he looked unbeatable.
Yeah.
In this match, he just couldn't rein it in. He was continuing to make errors late into the match, and that ended up costing him.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, though, Nike did a great job. Did you see his all-black fit that night, muscle shirt? It was cool. It was a great look, because I feel like he's eventually going to get, or I think he did get his own Nike line, like Federer and Nadal, like his own like version of Nike, whereas all the other Nike players, like Tiafoe, Sinner, and Musetti, they just kind of wear the same stuff. So you're risking wearing the same outfit as your opponent. Whereas now he's got his own line.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they do that for the top guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's move on to round 3 here. So Tiafoe versus Shelton. Tiafoe gets his revenge. Obviously lost to him last year in the quarterfinals and in Houston earlier this year. Really just a great win for him. And I feel like there's something about that New York energy that he just capitalized off of, because obviously best results have been here. He made semifinal, quarterfinal last year, and then quarterfinal again this year. Obviously that's kind of a spoiler for the next round, but still just an impressive run from him. And I don't know what it is about New York, but he gets it done. I think there's a little bit of an element of luck to it, but I still think it's a great job for him.
Yeah, this whole Shelton-Tiafoe rivalry, I feel like they kind of have big brother, little brother energy, and it kind of looked like the little brother was getting the best of the big brother there. So I feel like this was just huge for Tiafoe, like kind of a weight off his shoulder, because he's had Shelton like breathing down his neck. Is that kind of the right expression?
I guess,
there?
I mean, to me, it's a little different because Shelton has been ranked higher for a little bit now. And Shelton's probably had maybe more impressive results overall I mean, he has the U.S. Open semifinal last year, and then he won in Tokyo last year, and he's younger, and he's higher ranked, and he has a better head-to-head against him. So I feel like he almost has already surpassed him, and now Tiafoe's starting to come back.
Yeah. Well, that's what I meant was, like, Shelton was the little brother of Tiafoe because he's a lot younger than him. And it was just kind of like they're friends, right? Like, you saw them embrace each other at the net. They clearly want each other to do well, but I think there's a lot more pressure on Tiafoe when they play against each other than Shelton. Just because he is older, he's more established, he's been around longer. You know what I mean? It's like you don't want to lose to someone younger and up and coming.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it makes
sense. And for
sense.
Shelton, he's got nothing to lose. He's playing against Tiafoe.
But I feel like to an extent, Shelton was probably expected to win.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also that pressure.
Yeah.
Like, even though Tiafoe is more established, he isn't necessarily expected to win against Shelton because Shelton obviously played really well last year and has been having a decent year this year.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a comparison here. And I want to say it would be like whenever Wawrinka would play Federer. Because two guys coming from the same country. Like, you have to have some kind of camaraderie with another player who's from the same country as you, maybe a little younger. Because you do play tournaments together, like Davis Cup, Olympics. There are team tennis events where you get close. And especially being on tour with each other a lot. Like, you can't not like each other.
I get that. I get the camaraderie aspect. I don't know if that's the most accurate comparison, given that Federer stayed better than Wawrinka for like his entire career, pretty much.
So you think we'll see Shelton? Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
I guess what I was trying to say is the comparison of Federer had a lot more at stake whenever they played.
Yeah.
I think it's a.
To me, it's a toss-up between these two guys. I'm like, I feel like they both have the same amount at stake because Tiafoe was maybe a little older, but Shelton is the higher-ranked guy. So Shelton was expected to win probably, but Tiafoe also was like way more hype probably. Yeah. Even though Shelton obviously has a lot of hype around him. Yeah. Tiafoe in New York, it's crazy. He's everywhere.
Oh, I know. He's a walking hype train. Remember on the subway we saw him everywhere.
And then the other part of night 3 or round 3, night after Alcaraz gets eliminated, Djokovic goes out to Popyrin. I mean, Popyrin been red hot, obviously won in Canada, beats Djokovic in 4 sets. Interesting thing, he goes up 2 sets, loses that third, and I feel like as soon as he lost that third, people were probably like, okay, Djokovic is going to come back with 5. And I think people forget that it's very difficult to do that. Popyrin ends up closing him out the next set. I mean, one big thing about this match was just the fact that Djokovic's serve was just letting him down. I mean, I think he double faulted 4 times in one game. Yeah. It was insane, and ended up going down 2 breaks in that 4th set. I think he actually got one of them back, though, and then got closed out by Popyrin at the end there. It's just a tough situation for him where no Grand Slams for him. This is the first year, I think, since 2002, I want to say, that none of the big 4 have won a Grand Slam. Or maybe it was just the big 3, but either way, just crazy. It's been that long, and now we're looking at there's a pretty decent likelihood of a new Grand Slam champion coming out of this tournament.
Yeah, that would not be the worst thing. I just want to acknowledge Popyrin's summer. Like, what a last couple weeks this guy's having. Because I kind of wrote him off after Montreal. I did say I don't think we'll see a lot of Popyrin winning titles. Like, granted, he didn't win a title here, but he still beat Djokovic, which is another notch on his belt that he can take away. And I think also now I'm starting to see him as an up-and-coming player, someone who's like been taking time to really establish themselves on tour. I think he's going to be one of the forces that we'll start seeing. Like, now when I see his name in a draw, I'm going to start paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, it is crazy because, like, a month ago, I think I may have even said this last podcast, but, like, a month ago, this guy was a guy that people in the tennis community knew, but wasn't, like, an average sports fan would never heard of him. And all of a sudden, he wins this massive tournament in Canada and then beats Djokovic in the U.S. Open. It's like, oh, who is this guy? I bet people probably saw his name and thought he was, like, 21 or something. But it's like, no, he's been around for, like, 7-8 years. Yeah. And now he's just taking that step up.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Tommy Paul, someone who's been on the tour for a while but hasn't really broke out, and then has recently broke out and has been since like a solid top 20 player. I could see that for Popyrin.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for him.
You know, potentially top Aussie.
Maybe. I mean,
Maybe.
Deminar's still been playing very solid. Like that's a tough step to take. I just feel like we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Right. And I think this is also...
I mean, think about this. I mean, they play today, but technically Jordan Thompson and Deminar are both still in the draw, and Popyrin's out.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's one of those things where it's like you don't. It's like when Shelton became the top American. It's like, yeah, he technically got it on ranking, but it's like even at that point you weren't like he's really the top American. You're like it's probably Fritz or Paul.
Yeah. It's it's very fluid. Like they interchange weekly, right? And I think we could potentially start seeing that because Thompson's pretty far down.
Yeah,
right?
you know, he's not at the same level as like Deminar, but I still feel like Deminar's like separate. Like
Deminar's,
like,
there's a clear.
What
separation.
I'm saying is like you wouldn't say like Popyrin. If Popyrin got like 1 week above Deminar, you wouldn't really say he's like he's better than Deminar.
Yeah. I agree with that.
But anyway, let's get into the first part of the round of 16 though. This is our last round we're going to be covering here. Obviously, in the recap, we'll go through the second half of round of 16 because that's today. Those matches are happening, and then last few rounds will happen then. But just going off of yesterday, we were actually at the tournament. So we were there on Ash, and we got to see Dimitrov versus Rublev. Great match. Dimitrov played really great, especially in the first couple sets. I mean, just kind of performed, got it done in the first, clutched up in the tiebreak in the second. And then Rublev kind of just stepped it up slowly. I mean, it really seemed like Rublev was in control for a lot of the match. A lot of Dimitrov's games were going deuce, multiple deuces, and then Dimitrov ended up closing it out. And then most of Rublev's games, it felt like he was serving it out relatively easily. But in the end, Dimitrov stepped up, got it done in the fifth, and he's going to be playing Tiafoe and then Fritz or Zverev in the semifinal. And so I think this is maybe the best chance of his career, like his entire career, of like in the past and now to be able to win a major.
For sure. Very excited for him. And remember yesterday, you even said when we were watching, the first two sets felt like 2 hours, and the next two sets that Rublev won were half the time. It felt like an hour, just because in those Dimitrov, in the two sets that he was winning or that he won, he couldn't really hold serve as easily as Rublev was holding serve. And I thought it was really cool at the end of the match. Remember, Serena was there too, rooting for him. And then they're like, "Hey, Grigor, you got a special fan in the stands." And he's like, "Oh, really? It's Serena." So cool to see. He's a fan favorite, and it's going to be really interesting to see him play Tiafoe in the U.S. because Tiafoe has the home crowd, but Grigor is also a likable guy, like kind of crowd favorite. Where do you see the crowd impacting this match? Do you think it favors Tiafoe?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's going to be, honestly, you're going to see two different types of fans. That would be my guess. I think the fans, because you see this at the U.S. Open, probably at all the majors, but there are fans that show up because it's an event, and there are tennis fans that show up. I think the fans that show up because it's an event are going to be rooting all for Tiafoe because all the advertisements in the U.S. or in New York are like, "Oh, this is the Tiafoe. He's the big American."
Yeah.
And so people are going to show up and be like, "Oh, we're getting to see Tiafoe play. Sick. Let's root for him."
Yeah.
But then I think a lot of tennis fans are going to be like, Dimitrov, he's 34. He's had to live through the Big Four era, and he's getting a chance now. He's in maybe the best chance to make a run like this. And he has been playing really well last year, and then this year not quite as well. But this is such a great chance for him. And I feel like that perspective is going to be more prevalent in the people that know tennis more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But it's like, all right, Serena Williams, good friend of Grigor. Who does she root for here? Tiafoe, American guy, or her good friend? This is where like the tennis community kind of gets split too.
Well, that's also, I feel like that's like you have two friends playing each other. Which one do you root for?
It's like
probably
you just want to see.
You want to see a good match.
Good match.
You don't want to see one of them get blown out. I feel like is
the
correct answer.
I can tell you who the crowd's going to be for in Fritz and Zverev.
Yeah. I mean, Zverev is already not the most popular guy, and Fritz being the American, that's going to be it.
Maybe Morgan Riddle can rally up all of her social media followers.
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm going to be rooting for Zverev in this match is because Fritz really gets dragged down by that one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, he does.
But speaking of Fritz, he beat Ruud. That was over on Louis Armstrong while we were watching this Dimitrov Rublev match. And honestly, I said before the tournament that I would be more shocked if I saw Ruud in the semifinal than if he went out in the second round. Here he loses in the fourth round, and that's right in the middle. And I'm like, I'm not disappointed in Ruud.
Yeah.
Like this, he hit all of my expectations, probably exceeded them, to be honest, with the loss in the round of 16, even though hypothetically he's the higher seed. And this kind of made me think about whether there should be, not for like the rankings, but for the seeding system at a big tournament like this, would it be better to do the seeding based on how people have played on that surface? Like, if I have a clay court ranking and then I go into the clay court season and I say, yeah, maybe I'm like number 15 in the world on overall, but I go into the French Open and I'm ranked as the number 5 player in the world in clay tournaments. And does that mean that I should get a higher seed than some other person that maybe did better on hard courts? Because hypothetically, I'm more likely to do well.
Yeah.
Should I get? If you want to see the best tennis on clay, you might want those people to be higher seeded. It would become tough because you have like times where one guy plays a tournament on clay and one guy plays a tournament on hard court.
Right.
That would also make that interesting though, because then you're like, oh, I'm gaining seeding points for the French Open, but I may be lower seeded in the U.S. Open.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting point. I can see it. If you can make it work, I can see it actually, becoming a thing. But I just feel like it opens up the floodgates for too much, if
Trying to game
this,
the
then
system.
that. Yeah, gaming the system. And then, I don't know. Do you really think it's that? I feel like it's not as much of an issue. Like, okay, Ruud is a higher seed.
Yeah, no, but I think for like someone like Ruud, or like for example, Tsitsipas.
Yeah.
Tsitsipas losing the first round. It's like, should he have been the number 11 guy in the U.S. Open based on his performances this year on hard court?
Honestly, I don't hate it because it brings variability into the sport.
It brings variability in, but what I'm saying is like if you have like Baez, should Baez be really seeded at the U.S. Open? Maybe, but it should probably be like 30 rather than like 20.
So maybe, yeah, instead of like a pure surface ranking, like kind of a weighted, like a different
maybe,
scoring or
adding a weight maybe for the seeding aspect.
I could see that. Let's pitch it to the to the
exactly.
ATP.
Pitch to the ATP.
But yeah, going back, I guess Ruud, I just want to touch on this bet of the week for me. It wasn't my bet of the week, but taking him at plus 225, him winning the first set, and then just not having any confidence in him at all to win the match and wanting to root for Fritz, easy cash out money right there.
100%. Big win.
Yeah.
And then the other match on Louis Armstrong was Nakashima and Zverev. That was an interesting one. Obviously, Nakashima won the first set, but then Zverev came back, settled in, I think, and got it done. But like I said earlier, just really impressive for Nakashima. And I do think it was funny because they did this whole promo with the Americans in the round of 16. It had Fritz, and they had Paul, and they had Tiafoe. And it was funny because it was like clips of those three guys like talking and a bunch of highlights of them. And then every fifth shot, they would just throw in a random forehand of Nakashima or backhand, and they'd be like, "Oh, he's here too." And then they like cut to like the Americans still in the draw, and it's the four of them, and you're like, I just saw an interview from three of these guys, and you barely mentioned Nakashima until now, and I'm like, they definitely didn't prepare for him to make it this far, but I just think it's hilarious that he was able to kind of throw a wrench in their plans and get this far.
I know. And he's a quiet guy too, so it's not like he's, looking to be part of the attention. He gets his job done. He goes out on the court, he plays, and that's that.
Exactly. But speaking of the Americans, like I said, Tiafoe in the quarterfinals now after he beats Popyrin. I just think Popyrin was red hot. I mean, like I said, he came off of the win versus Djokovic here. Not necessarily the match of the tournament, but the biggest event of the tournament was him probably taking out Djokovic.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has probably a ton of confidence, but Tiafoe just gets it done in 4. And I don't have that much to say, but I just think that it really shows that Tiafoe feels comfortable here in New York.
Yeah, I also think you're also seeing a correlation here. Like, Botic beats Alcaraz, loses the next match to Draper. Like, Popyrin beats Djokovic, loses next match to Tiafoe. I think these guys are just kind of, there's a
sigh of relief.
Yeah, it's kind of like I did this, and it's kind of a foot off the gas, and to them that's maybe the highlight of their tournament.
Yeah, it's like even if they lose their next match, it's not a disappointing tournament because they got that.
Exactly. It's like they won something without ever winning.
100%.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, but so that's the recap. So, but we still got upcoming. So tonight, we got Sinner versus Paul.
So pumped.
That's going to be an exciting one. I think that Sinner obviously major favorite, but we'll see what Tommy can do if he can step up in New York in the U.S. Open. If he eliminates Sinner, then we'll only have one Grand Slam champ left, and that's Medvedev. And we'll see how that goes. But we got that match. We got a possible Sinner versus Medvedev quarterfinal. So either way, guaranteed in the semifinals, there will be only one former Grand Slam champion because those guys will play in the quarterfinals if they both make it there. Mm-hmm. And if it's Sinner that makes it through, we'll have a first-time U.S. Open champion. So that's one aspect. I'm also wondering to see, will we see an American in the semis? We got 3 left one in the 4th round and 2 in the quarters. Yeah. Will we see one in the semis? They're all split up, so we're not guaranteed one. But I mean, I could see Tiafoe beating Dimitrov, but he's probably the best chance.
He has the best chance.
But I don't want him to win. I want Dimitrov.
Man, so your allegiance. I guess, you've always been a big Dimitrov fan, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I just like Dimitrov because I feel like he's put in the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's been on the tour for so long. He's been a great player for a long time, and he's one of those guys that just kind of got screwed by being in the Big Four era, and has won Masters 1000, but other than that, nothing really to show for it. Mm-hmm.
I wonder what this does to his career. Like, if he wins this U.S. Open, if this catapults him into going on a red hot streak, or if he just becomes kind of content and he's like, hey, I got my Grand Slam. I'm 34. I'm gonna live out the rest of my life.
He could legit retire and be like, I just did it, man.
He could. And then that would truly be the end of an era, right? Because he's still kind of one of those guys like with Monfils and Wawrinka who's lingering
Cilic
around.
Or someone. Is Cilic even still playing? Raonic?
He's he'll pop in here and there.
Yeah.
But
Nishikori.
Yeah, Nishikori. Schwartzman's gone.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Anyway, you ready to hop into segments?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty, what's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
Yeah, so this week I've been seeing a lot of comparisons. I've seen a lot of people bring up Tiafoe's quarterfinal run and it being the 3rd time that he has, and then making these comparisons to American legends like Sampras, Agassi, and Roddick. So basically they're saying that they're making the stat that Tiafoe is grouped in with all these other guys because he's made it to a U.S. Open quarterfinal for the 3rd time in the 2000s. So Sampras won this tournament 5 times, and he made it every single year in the 2000s until he retired in 2003. He won it in 2002. Roddick 8 times, and he won it in 2003. Agassi won it twice in the 90s, and then we all know in the 2000s he made it to the final a couple times but couldn't win. I just feel like Tiafoe shouldn't be grouped in with these guys. I feel like they're just kind of creating a storyline out of nothing that was there. Don't get me wrong. Great run, great feat for Tiafoe to make it to a U.S. Open quarterfinal 3 times, but I just don't think that he should be compared with the other guys. And just because I think Tommy Paul and Fritz are better tennis players too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about it is they're always going to try to construct a storyline. Mm-hmm. They always have stats like that where they're throwing this guy in with other people where it's they don't really fit there, but we'll give it to you so that you can say whatever you want to. But in this scenario, like, I feel like it's kind of like if you looked at Michael Jordan in the 2000s and you were like, when he was on the Wizards, and you're like, okay, Michael Jordan scored 2,000 points. And you're like, yeah, Jalen Green has scored as many points as Michael Jordan in the 2000s. Like, yeah, but you're looking at a 38-year-old Michael Jordan who played for 2 years in the 2000s or whatever it is, 1 year. And you're comparing him to like a guy that's in the modern NBA, that's the beginning of his career. It's like, yeah, that doesn't really go together. They're not one-to-one.
Exactly. They're just picking, okay, from the 2000s, just so they can say, you know, like have a starting point. Because where do you, like, yeah, 3. Okay. What about if you take all these guys? Why not make the number 5 or 6?
It's like, how about this? Like, since 2020, Federer hasn't made any Grand Slam finals. So, like, he's kind of garbage, right?
Yeah. So,
Alcaraz has won 4 Grand Slams since 2020, and Federer has 0. So who's really the GOAT?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So that was something I've seen in the news, since yesterday that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
What about you? What did you see this week?
I saw that Alcaraz and Berrettini were over at the F1 race in Italy.
Ooh, already.
And yeah, exactly. That was my response already. And I think it kind of has to do with like what you were talking about earlier with like the burnout aspect. I think it's not that big of a negative. I think it's probably the right thing to do. I think maybe a little bit less for Berrettini because he's still kind of on the comeback, but Alcaraz really is at the top right now. He's at the top of the mountain in tennis. And he has to make sure that he can stay focused on it, but sometimes that means you need to be able to take a step back and calm down, refocus on the sport. Some guys, that's not how it is. Some guys like Brady, it's like, okay, he's in the next day working on his game. Watching film, exactly. But that's not how it is for every guy. That system of training won't work for everyone. And so I think it's probably good that he took a step back and went to this event and was just kind of focused on other things, enjoying life, and then he's going to refocus probably after the U.S. Open and in that later season swing.
Yeah, he's still a kid at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's kind of a lose-lose for him too, because people on the one end will be like, oh my God, he's early exit from U.S. Open. He's already at F1 race. And then the other side, people are going to be like, if he doesn't go to this F1 race, it's like, oh, he's burned out. He needs to do something else. He needs to take a break from tennis.
Exactly.
It's just like, can't win here. It's a lose-lose for him. But I'm glad he's doing it.
100%.
Especially if he likes the sport. But were they hanging out together? Did you see? Or
I think there was like a photo of them together.
Oh,
like
nice.
I think one of them took a selfie. But
nice.
Yeah. How about bet of the week?
Ooh, bet of the week. So I'm taking Fritz. He's plus 125 over Zverev. And I alluded to this earlier. I'm going based off momentum and energy of the crowd. I think Zverev, he's not the most mentally composed player all the time, and I feel like he can get really rattled by the crowd, and especially you got that like rowdy, energetic U.S. Open crowd. I think it's gonna tilt the favor toward Fritz because they're pretty even. Zverev has a 5-4 head-to-head record against him, and Fritz has actually beat him the last time they played in Wimbledon, so not too long ago. I feel like plus 125 is good value for this matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a fair evaluation, and I think it could go either way. It's nice to get the positive odds on a very close matchup like that.
I know, and I'm thinking it may be a serve fest too.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. 2 guys with big serves.
Yeah, exactly. 2 big guys. Zverev moves a little better than Fritz, I would say, but neither are like crazy movers.
Yeah. 100%.
What about you? Who are you taking this week?
I'm going with Tommy Paul over Sinner.
Wow.
Main reason, plus 500 odds. I think while I do agree Sinner is the favorite, it makes sense. I don't know if I'd go plus 500.
Yeah, that's wild.
I just feel like getting that 5-1 payout is pretty solid value for a match that, I mean, if we're talking about Sinner at the beginning of the year, maybe it is fair because Sinner was like undefeated his first 30 matches, something crazy. But at this point, he's lost a few times. He hasn't looked as dominant. I think Tommy Paul could maybe sneak it out if he plays out of his mind.
Yeah, I think there could be some good cash out opportunity there too. Like if Tommy goes up a break or goes up a set, maybe lock in plus 200 there. But yeah, I agree. Sinner's also, he's kind of been how do I say this? Like he hasn't really been 100% health wise. He seems like something could happen there. So I like that bet. I'm gonna be riding it with you.
Exactly. And then last one, match of the week.
Ooh, this was a great one. I took Tiafoe Shelton, and I think they got snubbed from the night session because they were the prime or the daytime match on Ash, and Djokovic was night. Part of me thinks that Djokovic made a special request that like, hey, I'm playing at night, and that's that. I think they should have the two Americans in the night session, but whatever, doesn't matter. This was a physical match. You had a 5-setter, just heavy hitting from both sides, big serves. Each player, too, is not afraid to celebrate. So it's like they're bringing up the crowd, they're getting pumped up. That was fun to see. And then this, it reminded me of almost like a football game because it was brawn on brawn. You had two of the bigger tennis players on tour, pretty cut up arms, wearing muscle shirts, just exchanging blows. And like you said earlier, Tiafoe got the best of him, but I think this is a good rivalry in the making, and it was so far one of my favorite matches of the whole tournament.
Yeah. In terms of the night session thing, I think it's just a higher seed, right? Mm-hmm. Djokovic is the number 2 seed, number 3 seed coming in.
But I feel like there has to be subjectivity in picking matches, right? Because you're at the U.S. Open. You should want to cater to the fans as well, I think. Yeah, I don't think it's purely based on ranking.
I think it's like the ranking guy gets a preference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're like, if you're number 1 in the world, you can pick. Do you want to play in the day or the night?
Yeah.
And I think Sinner said day on one of the days.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sinner played twice. I thought I was going to see Sinner Thursday night because he had played the day session before.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so Alcaraz played 2 night sessions. Sinner played 2 day sessions. So
exactly. So it's like he says, I want to play in the day.
Do they ask him?
Or do they just tell him? Like, hey, my guess because I feel like or maybe the number 1 player in the world does play during the day because I feel like Alcaraz played during the day last year.
Yeah. Either way, also something I forgot to mention, there was the point of the tournament, in my opinion, in this match. I don't know if you saw it, but Tiafoe hit a net ball. It, barely dropped over the net, and Shelton ran over there, scooped it up, fell backwards, and then they had a volley exchange at the net, and then Shelton was able to lob Tiafoe. It was incredible.
That sounds pretty sick.
Pure athleticism. Pretty sick.
Yeah, exactly.
How about you?
Mine was the match we were at, Rublev Dimitrov.
Nice.
I kind of already described it, but it was just sick to be there, experience the crowd, feel those momentum swings. But like we said, it was really interesting with how close the match was and how much it felt almost like Dimitrov. It felt like Rublev was winning the match even when he was losing, because it felt like he was winning more of the points. It felt like one big factor was the fact that Dimitrov double faulted 12 times for his 17 aces. That felt like so much.
Yeah. And
it happened a few times where it was multiple times in the game. And I wonder if that's how it is though usually. I don't really know the double fault statistics, but how often is it that people double fault, if they double fault 5 times in a match, do 3 of the double faults come in the same game because that's the game you weren't confident in your serve? Because that's how it felt with Dimitrov today or yesterday. It was like, okay, this game he's not confident in serve, so he double faults 3 times. Then the next 3 games he doesn't fault at all, and then he comes back after that and double faults 2 times again.
It's like when it rains, it pours.
Exactly. But it was pretty insane to see those, especially because a couple times I think it happened at deuce or he would double fault on deuce and then have to save the break point and then double fault again at deuce and then he saves the break point. It was crazy.
With an ace too. He would just double fault and then ace. So it's kind of hard being on the other end of that too. If you're Rublev, almost expecting a double fault and then ace,
Yeah. It was also really tense. I remember I think he broke it at 2-1 in the final set. And then he's at 3-1. They're serving. He has this really intense game. And then he gets to the finally Dimitrov's point, and I just lean over to Erik. I'm like, he's about to hit an ace. And he just aced him out, closed out that game, and then ended up winning the match. So it was pretty dope.
It was cool being there. And I hate to say it, but part of me wanted to see Rublev in person just to see kind of like how he acts on the court in person, because you always
I thought you were going to say wanted to see Rublev win.
No, God, no. I'm Dimitrov all the way. But you see all these outbursts on TV, and so I was thinking, we might get an outburst in real time in person, and we did. We got a few, which was funny because we were, sitting in the stands, and you can clearly hear the yells. You can see him like smashing his racket,
punching
on his
himself
leg.
in the face at one point.
Yeah, punched himself in the face.
You're like, what are you doing, dude?
I know. He had to get medical treatment too because he drew blood on his hand. But
crazy.
Yeah. Fun time though.
100%.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.